Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
That night, the neighborhood streets were lit up with soft lights, and a gentle breeze carried the pleasant smell of barbecue grills. Everyone had been looking forward to the block party for weeks. Laughter echoed from one side to the other, mixed with quiet music, lively chatter, and the cheerful clinking of glasses toasting new get-togethers and old friendships. Kids raced around the lawn playing hide-and-seek while the adults enjoyed a rare moment of relaxation. Sam and Claire arrived a bit after the party had already started. Claire looked stunning in a dark blue dress, with her hair neatly styled and flawless makeup. Next to her, Sam seemed relaxed in a lightweight dress shirt, but there was something in his expression, an uneasiness, as though he sensed something that deeply bothered him, even if he couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. At first, everything seemed calm. Claire greeted friends with enthusiasm and warmth, quickly drawing a circle of acquaintances around her who praised how great she looked. Sam, a bit shyer, stayed by her side, smiling quietly and patiently listening to the conversations about work, soccer, and the everyday details of life. He was there, trying to enjoy the evening, though he felt a little out of place amid so much excitement. After a while, in a collective moment of relaxation when everyone was close together, someone started telling jokes. Soon, several people chimed in, making witty comments that set off laughter and created a light, fun atmosphere. Seeing the perfect chance to grab everyone's attention, Claire raised her hand, signaling for the floor with a playful expression that drew curious eyes in her direction. Sam felt something strange in his chest at that moment, a nagging feeling he tried to ignore. He forced a small smile as his wife began to speak. Claire took a deep breath and, with an unusual sparkle in her eyes, started her joke with a seemingly innocent tone. "You know, guys, I've always heard that size doesn't matter," she said slowly, a sly smile on her face. A few people chuckled awkwardly, not entirely sure where she was going with it. She kept going, using a sharper sarcastic tone and casting a quick, mischievous look Sam's way, "But in my husband Sam's case, I can promise you, it really doesn't. In fact, it's so small that sometimes I need a magnifying glass just to find where it is." An awkward silence settled over everyone for a split second. That kind of joke clearly went beyond a couple's private boundaries. But the tension soon broke when one of the more uninhibited neighbors let out a loud laugh, prompting a few uneasy, forced giggles, as if driven by a shared feeling of embarrassment. Some guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, instantly recognizing how inappropriate the joke was. Sam's face felt like it was on fire, as though he'd taken a physical blow. Shame flooded every inch of his body, as if thousands of eyes were judging him all at once. Claire, however, seemed pleased to be the center of attention, smiling like she had just scored some personal victory in that humiliating moment. There was no regret, no concern for the discomfort she had just caused. For a few seconds that felt like hours, Sam desperately searched for something to say, some way out that might ease his humiliation, but his mind was completely blank, paralyzed by shock and the ache in his chest. He couldn't even react, feeling helpless and exposed in front of those people who were now entirely focused on him. Realizing he couldn't handle that atmosphere for another second, Sam simply turned around, ignoring the worried calls of a few close friends who clearly saw how shaken he was. He walked away quickly, almost running, his mind swirling with emotion, embarrassment, sadness, and a bitter disappointment wrapped in confused feelings about what had just happened. His wife, the person who should protect and support him above all, had just dealt him his worst moment of public humiliation. Unable to even go back home that night, Sam drove aimlessly through the deserted streets, fighting back tears. A little later, he pulled into a cheap, empty motel he found along the way, where he finally let all the pain he'd been holding in pour out. Lying alone on an unfamiliar bed, staring at the cold, lifeless ceiling, he tried to make sense of what had just happened. Claire's cruel words still echoed in his ears, slowly eating away at any confidence he had left. Sam knew that night was going to change everything. He didn't know yet how he would react or what would come next, but he was sure something in his marriage had been irreversibly broken. That public humiliation had crossed a line, showing him with alarming clarity that he might be with someone who didn't respect him the way he deserved. As the night dragged on, Sam stayed there, searching for answers to his painful, deep questions, unaware that this was only the beginning of something much bigger and more devastating than he could have imagined. The next day, Sam woke up feeling exhausted. It felt like the weight of that disastrous night still clung to every inch of his body. His eyes were tired and swollen from the silent crying he had let loose during the early morning hours. Even the weak sunlight sneaking through the curtains felt offensive, lighting up the awful reality of the humiliation he'd have to face again. Slowly, he got up and looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His face was pale and worn, marked by a deep sadness he hadn't felt in a long time. Too drained to go back home or look at the relentless stream of messages on his phone, he decided to seek support where he had always found it, even if it came in a tough or awkward way, from his father, George. Since Sam's mother had passed away when he was still a child, George had raised him alone, always strict, never tolerating any sign of emotional frailty. Still, it was the only place Sam felt he might find some comfort in that devastating moment. Sam drove slowly to his father's old house on a modest street filled with difficult childhood memories. He parked out front and felt his heart race as he headed to the door. After taking a few deep breaths, he knocked gently, trying to stay calm. George answered soon after, dressed simply as always, wearing his usual severe expression, gray beard, and piercing look that seemed to judge any situation in silence. "Sam? What are you doing here so early?" George asked, a puzzled look on his face as he noticed his son's worn-out appearance. Sam entered quietly and sat at the kitchen table, feeling the tension build inside him. George sat across from him, silently waiting for an explanation. Sam hesitated a moment, his trembling hands resting on the old wooden table, until he finally managed to speak. "Dad, something really humiliating happened at the neighbor's party last night. Claire made some jokes about me, really personal stuff, exposing me in a terrible way in front of everyone. It was so painful, I've never felt so humiliated." George stayed completely still, listening to every word, but his expression slowly shifted into something between anger and disappointment. Once Sam finished, George just shook his head, letting out an impatient sigh. "Really, Sam? You came all the way here because of some stupid joke your wife made? How old are you, kid?" George shot back, raising his voice in irritation. "You need to stop this nonsense, Sam. That's not how a grown man acts. You're acting like some spoiled teenager whining for attention." Sam's cheeks got hot from embarrassment, stunned and deeply hurt by his father's reaction. He wasn't expecting warmth or much sympathy, but his dad's harsh words cut even deeper than the humiliation from the night before. "Dad, you don't understand, it wasn't just a joke, it was really humiliating," George interrupted sharply. "Oh, come on, Sam. Are you going to keep crying over this forever? Are you going to stay hurt forever over some unimportant joke?" George pointed at him accusingly, staring at him coldly. "Listen up, boy, you need to go back home right now and apologize to your wife for staying out all night and making her worry over your nonsense. That's what a responsible man does." Sam felt suffocated, his chest tightening as he looked at his dad's severe expression. There was no room there for sadness or comfort. George would never allow it. "But Dad," George abruptly stood up from the table, cutting off any attempt at an emotional conversation, "I don't want to hear your excuses, son. Be a man for once in your life. Solve your problems without whining like a kid." Sam stayed seated, unmoving, as his father walked out of the kitchen. The house felt colder and emptier than ever, increasing the loneliness he felt. That harsh lecture only magnified the pain he was already carrying, and it made him question everything he believed about himself. His heart shattered, Sam realized bitterly that he wouldn't find the understanding he needed in that house. Driving slowly back home, Sam still heard his father's harsh words echoing in his mind. Each sharp sentence rang louder than the last, pounding in his head like a painful but necessary warning. Man up, stop looking for attention, grow up. The phrases repeated insistently, like a strict voice shining a light on something deep inside him. In that moment, Sam understood that no matter how tough his father had been, maybe that jolt of reality was exactly what he needed to finally grow. When he parked in his driveway, he took a deep breath, feeling different. He wasn't the same fragile, uncertain man who'd left there the night before. Suddenly, he felt stronger, more determined, more self-assured. He opened the door with confidence and headed toward the living room where he found Claire on the couch, visibly upset, eyes red from crying. Seeing him come in, Claire stood up at once and tried to run into his arms. But Sam held up his hand gently, asking her to stop. His firm, self-assured posture shocked her. "Claire, first of all, I want to apologize for not coming home last night and leaving you worried without any news. It was wrong of me to react the way I did. I shouldn't have run away like that." Claire was taken aback by Sam's calm, mature words. She swallowed hard and looked down, genuinely remorseful. "No, Sam, it's me who needs to say sorry. That joke was childish, stupid, unforgivable. I didn't think about the consequences, and I humiliated you in front of our friends. I never should have done that to you. Please forgive me." Sam nodded slowly, sensing a sense of peace in that conversation. There was no drama, no over-the-top tears, just two adults facing their mistakes head-on. At that moment, Sam realized that he was finally taking on a different attitude, firmer, more mature, and self-assured, just as his father had demanded minutes before. The following weeks brought big changes to Sam's routine. Every day, he felt more confident and stronger, as if he had awakened from a long, deep sleep. He started visiting his father more often, showing him a new demeanor that was steadier and calmer. George seemed proud to finally see in his son the maturity he had always demanded. However, as Sam grew emotionally stronger and took on a more mature role in his relationship, he began noticing things he had never seen before, small details, subtle behaviors from Claire that once would have gone unnoticed. One evening, while Claire was taking a shower, he saw her phone buzzing on the kitchen table. Unable to resist, he took a quick glance and saw the name Brian show up repeatedly in silent notifications. His heart tightened for a moment, but Sam, now more secure and level-headed, decided not to jump to conclusions. Instead, he chose to watch more closely before acting. Over the next few days, he noticed Claire leaving work earlier a few times a week, claiming unexpected meetings or vague appointments. He also observed small changes in her behavior, how she was overly careful with her phone, her constant excuses to step away for certain calls, and how anxious she got when particular messages arrived. Sam was no longer blinded by his old insecurities. Now, alert, stable, and mature, he connected the dots that had been there all along. Something wasn't right, something that in his former emotional fragility he never would have caught was suddenly right in front of him, demanding that he handle it like the grown man he had become. On that sunny afternoon, Sam was more determined than ever. A deep intuition told him exactly where Claire would be, and who she would be with. He drove carefully, keeping a safe distance, while his heart beat steadily and controlled. The insecurity had been replaced by a quiet certainty guiding his every move. He followed Claire through busy streets until he saw her car discreetly turning into a motel on the outskirts of town. Sam felt a bitter pang in his chest, but he took a deep breath and stayed in perfect control of his feelings. He knew exactly what needed to be done. He parked in a strategic spot, far enough away not to be noticed, but close enough to get what he came for. A few minutes later, he saw a familiar car arrive at the same motel. It was Brian, the coworker whose name had been popping up in the strange messages on Claire's phone. Without hurrying, Sam documented everything. He took photos of the moment Claire greeted Brian warmly at the door of their room, captured each complicit look, every intimate hug, every act that shattered any faint hope of a misunderstanding. In that exact moment, something inside him changed forever. Sam didn't feel sadness, uncontrollable anger, or even the need to confront them on the spot. He simply turned off his phone, calmly put it in his pocket, and headed home, certain of when and how to reveal the truth. Days later, the neighborhood barbecue night rolled around again. Sam and Claire hadn't shown up since that humiliating incident. This time, though, they arrived together, looking like a normal couple. But everyone quickly noticed something different about Sam. He was serious, confident, standing tall with a composure that commanded respect. He wasn't the vulnerable man they'd seen on that infamous evening. Now he moved with assurance, politely greeting everyone, while Claire, feeling slightly out of place, tried to hide her unease. The evening went on happily, people talking, drinking, laughing out loud just like they always did at those laid-back get-togethers. Claire seemed relieved, naively thinking that everything was back to normal. But at exactly that moment, Sam decided it was time to put an end to any illusion. He rose gracefully and assertively in the center of the gathering, tapping a spoon against his glass. Conversations instantly stopped and curious eyes turned to him. Claire looked startled, uneasy about her husband's unexpected move. "Good evening, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I'd really appreciate your attention for just a few minutes," he said calmly, his voice firm and unwavering. People glanced at each other, wondering what was coming next. Sam walked casually over to a screen, connected his phone with precision, without the slightest shake or hesitation. Claire felt a sudden chill run down her spine. "A lot of you remember what happened the last time we were here. That day, I learned an important lesson. Today, I want to show you something else I've learned since then." Sam pressed a button on his phone, and the screen clearly showed the photos and videos of Claire's affair with Brian. Silence fell over the crowd, instant and absolute. The guests stood in shock, speechless, while Claire stood there frozen, unable to move, completely overwhelmed by shame and disbelief. Sam, still steady, looked directly at her, then calmly turned off his phone and disconnected it from the screen. He didn't say another word, didn't display any emotion or loss of composure. He turned and walked out, leaving in silence, walking with determination toward his car. Claire remained there, paralyzed by the exposure, feeling the silent judgment of neighbors who had witnessed her boldness months before. Sam drove home in total tranquility, packed his bags, and methodically organized his things. As he was finishing, Claire arrived in a panic, bursting into the house in tears, desperately trying to come up with some explanation. "Sam, please, listen to me, I don't know what to say," she began, trembling. But Sam raised his hand gently to stop her, without even looking at her. "There's nothing else to say, Claire. There's nothing left to talk about between us. My lawyer will be in touch soon." Not allowing a single word of protest or apology, Sam picked up his luggage and left the house for good. Claire stood there, lost, with no idea what to do, as the silence around her became overwhelming. A few weeks later, the divorce went through quietly, without drama. Sam, now a truly mature man, handled the separation with total calm. He had learned at last that loving himself was the real key to happiness. He moved on without looking back, refusing to let that pain define him. The humiliation that once seemed to have ruined his life became the greatest lesson he had ever learned. Strong, confident, and grown, Sam knew exactly who he was, and who he would never let himself become again. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.